When I think about manufacturing in Nebraska, I think of how it might be unknown, but it should be known because we do some really cool things here in Nebraska. Agriculture, that's the first thing that they think about all the time, but actually our biggest GDP is manufacturing. Everything from medicines to equipment to steel to you name it.
Hey, what's up, folks? We're coming at you live from Dusters in Columbus, Nebraska, where we've been exploring what manufacturing means to the state. We're about to talk to a systems integrator, Huffman Engineering, to learn what they bring to the table to this unique manufacturing community here in the state of Nebraska. All right. Well, hey, the only appropriate way to start this, Jason, is cheers.
Cheers.
Welcome to Made Here. Welcome to Manufacturing Happy Hour.
Yeah, thank you.
So, in the spirit of Manufacturing Happy Hour, I have to ask you, where are we hanging out right now? Paint the picture for those that might just be listening to this on audio, for example.
Yeah, so today we are at Dusters. It's kind of a small town restaurant here in Columbus, Nebraska. It's got that hometown feeling to it, and just a fun place to be and hang out.
Yeah, funny enough, this is the one place I really remember coming in central Nebraska before. So I've been to
really?
Dusters once before. Well, you can thank the CED Rensenhouse crew for that, because they throw their event at the community college here in the spring. I feel like I keep bringing this up on the podcast, but this is actually where I came for craft beer and steak the night before that event.
Oh, nice.
So, and I think to let everyone know, there's literally, we're like inside of a grain silo, basically a grain bin. It is shaped like a grain bin, so quintessential Nebraska. And they brew their own beers as well.
Yeah.
So, one question I have to ask you in the spirit of doing this series in Nebraska is something funny enough that hasn't come up in the series yet is irrigation, for example. And yesterday I learned what something called a pivot was. I've seen pivots my whole life driving across the Midwest or the Central Valley in California, but how would you describe a pivot to someone who is not familiar with the term from an irrigation standpoint?
Well, in the simplest form, it is a big sprinkler. It's a system that's going out and irrigating a large field, and they've really grown technologically over the years, and now they have a lot of new technologies in them. They're using some GPS for some of their guidance. They're using special valving for controlling different nozzles and just how water is applied across the field. So it's really grown in the technology, and it's just a huge benefit here, especially in the agriculture area that we're in.
Mm-hmm. And the way I've always thought about it, it's basically like those giant arms that you see in the middle of a field that there's like tires on it, so it can basically, it's called a pivot because it spins around its particular area. Am I on the right track there, or I'm sure there's more to it?
Yep, you are. Yes. The majority of pivots that you see do go in that giant circular motion, and then some of them they have just move back and forth in a line that just goes back and forth on the field. So yes.
Okay, so yeah, there are different ways that they move.
Yeah.
I appreciate this intro into what I would call a quintessential piece of Nebraska manufacturing, and I know that's just one of the many applications that you work on. So, I've got a question for you, and then I'm actually going to be asking your teammates this same question, but like, what are the type of projects that you see Huffman Engineering working on? And based on that, how does that help you be successful, particularly here in the state of Nebraska?
Yeah, a lot of what we work on is engineering and controls and automation, and helping our customers to really bring their manufacturing processes into the future and helping them to be successful in what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Can you maybe describe some of the range of applications you do as well, just to have a picture of that as we dive into this portion of the conversation?
So the range of projects that we do or applications are anything from upgrade, a lot of Manufacturers have equipment that they've brought into their facilities over the years and needing upgrade to bring it into that Industry 4.0 or try to get it closer to that. So we're in there doing a lot of upgrades. We're doing working with customers who have this idea in their mind of how we have this way that we've been doing the manufacturing process, but we want to do it better. We want to be more efficient with it, and we need help getting there. And so we'll come in and we'll help them basically from start a design that they have in their mind and help bring it into fruition, and through the design process to the implementation and just taking it the whole way.
I like it. No, that's a helpful start, and I know we're going to be hearing from some of your teammates here in a second. So, Jason, you'll be coming up here towards the end of the interview, but I want to give you a cheers and thank you for helping us kick off round one.
Thank you.
Well, for our audience out there, this is going to be kind of fun because we're literally like hot swapping out guests, much like you would like a ControlLogix controller in the middle of this interview this time. So Jason just started answering this question, but I want to hear your thoughts on it too. You know, what are the type of projects you're taking on, and how does that allow you to be successful in Nebraska in particular? So Kim, we'll start with you, and then Jim, you can back clean up on this one.
Yeah, you bet. So I guess from my perspective, and not being an engineer, I kind of come from two stages of this, right? So I'm not from Nebraska originally, so I'm from out of state. And so when I come to the state of Nebraska, I want to learn everything I can. And I think the first thing a lot of people think of is the heart of the country, in the middle of the country, right? Agriculture. That's the first thing that they think about all the time. But actually our biggest GDP is manufacturing here. And so to be able to be a part of projects where we can help people manufacture everything from medicines to equipment to steel to you name it, a lot of different projects and a lot of different products, just really feels great. One of our founding principles is really to give back to the community. Making ideas work is our tagline, and like that's literally what we do. We go in and we work with these manufacturers. We say, what do you want to get done and how can we help? And so when I think about manufacturing in Nebraska, I think of how it might be unknown, but it should be known because we do some really cool things here in Nebraska.
And to your point, I think this is one of the first times in this series it's come up, but I'm surprised it hasn't come up more, that the biggest GDP here is manufacturing rather than agriculture, which I think for a lot of folks when they hear that for the first time, they're like, I've always just thought of corn when I thought of Nebraska, right? So I love hearing that aspect. Jim, what would you add to this answer?
Well, I think, we can talk about a little bit about how Huffman has evolved as far as how to support that. Because, years ago, Huffman was a small company, built on a few good things that they did, difficult projects. But as we've evolved, we've obviously got into a lot of different industries. We got into wastewater, water projects, pharmaceutical, things like that. It sets in a state like Nebraska when there's not a lot of competitive engineering companies like ourselves. We're a control system integrator, but we're also an engineering firm. We have 7 registered or professional engineers. We have probably 30 or 20 some engineers. So we're set up a little bit differently. So that allows us to be able to do a lot of projects a lot of other competitors can't do. And so when we look at other like manufacturing projects and stuff, we have a lot of base of experience that we can pretty much tackle anything. We always used to have a risk assessment on taking on a new project that's something difficult, whatever. But it seemed like we take on about anything because we've had a lot of base of experience to do about anything. We have a lot of people that have done a lot of very difficult jobs that, it can be water, wastewater, it can be, pharmaceutical, but it can also have relate very closely to what manufacturing projects take as well. So
I think that's one of the benefits that we have as being a system integrator is we get to step into and out of different industries, and we bring that experience to each project that we bring to the table, right? So we do work in agriculture, and we do work in manufacturing, and we do work in the other industries that Jim mentioned, but it's just a benefit to have that cross-industry experience and bring that to the table.
So this is a nice segue into what I wanted to ask you next, because we've been hanging out with a lot of end users while we've been here this week, and you brought up a great point that You have a diverse range of industry experience: water, wastewater, pharma, metals, agriculture. Like, you cover a wide range. So let me ask this, like, from your perspective, when you get brought into end user, and knowing that you do see things from a number of different industries already, what would you say is your unique expertise when you walk in the door there as Huffman Engineering? Jim, you're laughing, so you get to start this one off.
It's kind of a cop-out, and I say the unique, but it is that breadth of experience, because I think a lot more companies are well-suited for certain things, where we have a much more expanded wealth of knowledge, really. We have computer networking, we have control system, we have electricians, we have engineers for design. That's really what brings more to the table than most others can bring.
Yeah. No, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And having worked for Rockwell Automation before this and in the industry for a long time, that's where I see a lot of the value from systems integrators, engineering firms, etc. Kim, would you add anything to this one?
I guess from my perspective, one of the things that we try and do is listen really well. And I know a lot of companies say that, but we really stand behind that. So when we step into an end user's their space, their home, what they know really, really well, they have a unique perspective to bring to us. And we haven't stepped into that before, or if it's a repeat customer, I guess we have stepped into that before.
Yeah.
But we're really listening to hear what is it that you need to have happen here.
Right.
And we're not just giving you a solution just to give you a solution. We want to bring the best to your table. We can talk all day about what we think is great about Huffman Engineering, but what I tell our crew all the time is a client testimonial is like gold to me, right? Because if they speak to what we do well, then that tells us that we're doing a good job. And what I hear most is detailed documentation, the fact that we can help their qualification and validation teams, the fact that we really heard exactly what they said and then brought them a solution, not just for solution's sake, but a solution that could work for them. So that, I guess that's, from my perspective, what I hear most from our customers.
Yeah, and I like what you said about they have a unique perspective to give to us as well. One of my questions is, a lot of what we're doing with this series is we're exploring what manufacturing means to the community here and to the culture here in Nebraska. So my next question would be, do you feel like part of the team, and how specifically so do you feel like part of the team when you're working with an end user? Kim, we'll start with you this time.
Oh, well, I'm the marketing manager, so I don't know. I said a little bit outside of that, but I'll go with this. Our goal is always to be an extension of the automation team, right? Or their engineering team. That is our goal. Is we don't want to come in and tell you we have an expertise and you don't know what you're doing. They know what they're doing. They know their processes. They know what they need from us. So our goal is always to do that, and I hope that we meet that. That is truly what we try and do every day. We try and engineer with impact. That is one of the goals that we do every day. Now, ask the engineer if that actually
Jim, what do you
happens
think
in
on
practice.
this? No, that was a great answer, by the way.
Actually, one of my most favorite things to do is develop a relationship with our customers, because they have certain expertise. They know more about their process than you do. The idea is that you can bring more to the table, basically for a solution for them, because they may not be aware of all those.
Yeah.
And the best thing about any job any project I'm on is that relationship, because you're selling that. It isn't like you have to sell it, because when you're working to the same goal, you're both benefiting. Because like you said, you talk about Nebraska. This is our home. This is we're here to stimulate growth just as much as they are in selling their products. We're here to help create jobs and things like that, because we want to be successful as a state and make every company that we work for successful. That way they have no hesitation to bring us back into a project, because hey, they're in it for the right reason and to make us successful, and we both can make each other successful.
Do you feel a sense of civic responsibility to grow manufacturing in the state of Nebraska? After all, you are that expert in controls, automation, engineering that sees the broader picture that someone inside of one facility they see what they're doing really well every day, but you've got that broader picture. So do you feel that sense of civic
I think
responsibility?
if you don't, there's something wrong with you. You're not truly Nebraskan.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, honestly, and it's like if you don't feel like you're benefiting others as well and benefiting, then there's something wrong. You're obviously not in it for the right reasons. It'd be my opinion.
Our core values literally start with do the right thing and make others successful, and we have 4 others or whatever, but they literally start with that. Like, we are doing the right thing for our customers. That's our goal every day. And that's what Renson House does every day. That's why we partner with partners like Renson House, where we find other companies that actually want to do what we want to do, which is make our customers successful, because then we know we're successful as a team and as a partnership. And so that's our goal.
And maybe it's just because I spend so much time here, but I do think the Nebraska manufacturing community is uniquely strong. How would you characterize the community here when you have players like the large end users here, Huffman Engineering, Renson House? How would you describe the manufacturing community in this state?
I think it's very strong because I think you have a good work ethic as well. You know, it's like the support systems and stuff, because they're more focused. You know, I think, and like I said, they know that their lifeblood, their lifeline to be successful is to basically they have fewer clients and customers than what other states do. So they know they have to support them that well. Otherwise, they're not going to be around very long.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Kim, anything you would bring
Well,
into this?
I mentioned I'm not from Nebraska originally,
Where
but
are you from originally? I have to ask. You've mentioned it twice now.
okay, so I moved around quite a bit. So
Okay.
I moved about every 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
My dad worked for the railroad, so we
Got
moved
it.
around quite a bit. But we landed here and we stayed here because
Okay.
we love the people here and we love the communities here. And we love, like Jim said, there's great work ethic here. There's great sense of community where we're all in it together and we all want to lift each other up together. And I think that's what you see in the manufacturing community all the time, whether it's promoting, legislation that will help move manufacturing forward, whether it's helping each of us individually grow our companies to continue that growth of the GDP and support our state. Whatever we're doing, we're trying to do it together. And I think that's just it's a great way to live, and it's just about the character of the people you find here.
So last question before our next hot swap, as we'll call it. And we'll ask the next crew that comes up here the same question. End users, especially what we've seen this week, they take a lot of feedback from the folks on the factory floor to figure out, hey, what do we need to do next? What do we need to do to improve quality, safety, productivity? The executive teams, the leadership at these end users are taking that feedback. I'm curious, at what point do you get brought into this as well, where all of a sudden, they've been given some new priorities from the folks they're listening to out on the factory floor. When does Huffman Engineering get called back in?
That really depends on your customer, because if they have a pretty extensive engineering department, so to speak, and they have a good idea about what they want done, sometimes we're brought in later. If they don't necessarily have a solution for something, we brought in very early, and that helps us understand something. Like I said, if we have a relationship with that customer, a very good relationship, and it's been there for several years, we know a lot about their system. So it really depends on that. And when you're alluded to having talking to the people on the factory floor, that's something that's often missed. And I think that's one thing. Even the years I've been at Huffman, that's a very important piece of the puzzle, because even the people that are up the food chain, basically identifying what the problems are, they don't necessarily know everything either. And it's very, very, it's worth a ton just to sit down and talk to those people and understand what their issues are, because you can put a new system in, and that system will not succeed if the people that are using it don't feel like their needs were met. And sometimes, and that's a very important piece, and we find that all the time. So it's always anytime you have an opportunity to discuss things with them, it's always worth a ton. So
the system does not succeed if the people using it don't feel like their needs were met. Great answer there. Kim, help us wrap this one up. What are your thoughts on this question?
I guess from my perspective, we are kind of brought in 2 main situations, whether it's a greenfield project where it's ground up, it's a brand new facility, hey, we're going to build this up and we want you to be And I tend to think that we get brought in a little bit earlier on those greenfield projects because the automation part of it, the brains part of how it works, has to be a part of those fundamental discussions on the front side, especially with really complex systems. And then we're also brought in an existing facility where they need upgrades or they need new technology or they just, maybe something's not working and we need to tweak something for them or figure out why it's not working. And so that might be a little later stage of the game. But I guess what we'd say, and I hope I can speak for our engineers and technicians and everybody that's super talented at Huffman Engineering, when I say this, because I don't actually get to go to the customers, but I hope that whatever stage we get brought in, that we're really helpful, that we're really listening to your needs, and that we can, execute something that you can really feel proud of, and that will move your company forward. Because when you're successful, we're all successful together.
Well, I appreciate the perspectives you've each brought to this revolving door of our interview today. I didn't get to ask you about your root beer yet because we're at a craft brewery, but you also have a home brewed root beer as well. Is that correct?
I confess I'm not a real beer drinker, but when they said root beer, I was like, oh, I have to try it. It's amazing. So if you come to Dusters in Columbus, please come have some root beer.
Cheers to that.
Cheers to you.
Thank you both.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, well, our next hot swap is here. So we've got our last guest, Jason, welcome back, and Alex, welcome aboard for the first time here. So let's go back to what we were just talking about. When end users get a lot of feedback from their frontline teams, at what point are you seeing Huffman get brought in to be part of that team? Alex, we'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, I think Jim and Kim mentioned some items, but something that I see a lot, which is cool, is the customers that I'm already working with. And so it's kind of, we're coming back for either different things on the same equipment or different parts of their plant or different equipment. So we kind of get brought in maybe at the beginning of their talks of deciding to do something, just because we've shown that we've been a part of their team already. So I think it's cool those times when we get to be brought in when we already have experience in their facility.
Right, so you're already part of the team. This is round 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that you're getting brought in for. Jason, what would you add to that?
I would say we want to be brought in as soon as possible.
Yeah.
The sooner the better, because then you can start to identify pitfalls that are come early in the project. Mm-hmm. You can make plans for those. You can, if everyone's in our industry right now is looking at getting to that industry 4.0, mm-hmm. and if we're not speccing the right control equipment up front, then we're not going to be able to get there, and we're going to have to do an upgrade before we can even start thinking about how do we get this data that everybody's wanting. So the earlier the better for getting in on a project.
That actually brings up one of the questions I wanted to ask here at the end. What is next for industrial automation? Because you and I were kind of chatting about this. People are making that move. They're moving away from their PLC5s, their SLIC controllers. They're doing the upgrades. But what in your mind comes after that, right? The things that really bring, let's say, Industry 4.0 to life in this industry.
I think a lot of it is now that we're upgrading everything to equipment that has that Ethernet or some type of communications that you can get to it with your SCADA system, is starting to think about how do you network all of this? How do you make sure that you have enough infrastructure to support that network? How do you get that data to a central location and put it into a form that is easily understandable for anybody that's looking at it? So it's really, the next step is taking all this data that mm-hmm. is out there and being able to put it in a spot that is easily accessible and in a form that everyone can see it and understand what's going on.
Do you feel like Nebraska manufacturers are getting there at this point?
I think that we're all on our way there. Yep. Yeah. I think some people are going full steam ahead and are there already, and others are realizing the benefits and are looking at, we got a ways to go, but that's where we want to be, and we need to start making a plan for it.
And this is probably a pretty appropriate final question. What does Huffman Engineering do to level itself up And then, partnerships have been a big part of this discussion. How do you help your customers level up as well? Alex, we'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, so I think it's important for us that we get to see a lot of different stuff, so we know when the new stuff comes out, and every year, all the new versions of everything, we kind of get to touch all of it. So being able to be that person for our customer to say, oh, this is the latest, and this is what people are doing, and this is kind of the best practice that we think is going to be good for your facility. And did you have a second part to that question?
How do you it was basically how's Huffman leveling up and then bringing it to your customers. I think you kind of tackled it all at once right
perfect.
there. So no, that worked out well. And you do a lot with partnerships as well. So I do want to dive into that. Like where do you see the value, particularly here in Nebraska and the manufacturing community we've been talking about? How does partnership help manufacturers and Huffman Engineering succeed here as well?
Yeah, so we partner a lot with Renson House, and that one's fantastic because it's really about connecting the dots to then build the partnerships with customers and having all three of us involved in a partnership. Because Renson House really is involved in those local areas and is involved with those customers all the time, and they may hear things about what they want and things that they're needing, and then they can say, oh, we have somebody that can come in and they do that all the time and they can help you with that. So that's always a fantastic thing to be able to take our expertise and then help them where they truly need it.
And I think I lied here. That wasn't the last question because Alex, you brought this up when we came back on camera. You're like, hey, we've got a really good answer to what are the type of projects that kind of define success in Nebraska. So Jason, I believe you wanted to take a mulligan on this and you had some thoughts you wanted to add.
Yeah, so you would ask, what makes manufacturing unique in Nebraska, and one of the things that makes it unique is a lot of the manufacturers around here that you've kind of looked at, it all started with an idea and somebody in their garage or a shed in the backyard, and they had this idea and they started implementing it, and their neighbors saw it and like, oh, that's really cool and I want that, can you make it for me? Yeah. And so they've slowly grown their manufacturing process over the years to what it is now. And that's, I think, really unique for this area, is that people have this ingenuity and this get it done type attitude, and everyone's just working together to try to make this thing successful and make things better for the people around them and themselves.
I love that kind of the story of Nebraska manufacturing you just told is kind of the quintessential story of like American manufacturing. So no, this is great. I appreciate the insights the entire Huffman Engineering team has brought to this. So one final cheers. Thanks so much for jumping on the show.